Hi, my name's Chloe Preedy and I'm an Associate Professor in Early Modern Drama at the University of Exeter. My research specialism, as that title suggests, is largely located in the field of early modern drama. I've written, for instance, a first book that looked at Christopher Marlowe and sceptical representations of religious turmoil within his drama and his poems. I've also written on dramatists that perhaps received somewhat less attention generally nowadays, including, for instance, Thomas Heywood, George Peele and Thomas Nash, looking at his dramatic writings as well as his prose. Most recently, I've been thinking about intersections between environmental imagery and early modern drama, particularly in terms of producing a monograph on aerial environments on the early modern stage, which looked at the representation of aspects such as flight, wind power, air pollution, and scent imagery, including the production of smoke. That particular interest and my future research that I'm currently working on, thinking about weather imagery in relation to early modern dramatic performance and indeed extreme weather events in early modern England, overlaps with my contributions to the MA programme, which include specifically convenorship and delivering seminars on the module Environments of Early Modern Drama. You can probably already see there's a fairly close overlap there with the current research and future research I've been doing on aerial environments and the weather. Seminars on that particular module include also elements such as thinking about air quality in drama, forests in Titus Andronicus and their representation, and other environmental aspects, including physical space.
Hello, my name is Naya Tsenturu and I'm a lecturer in early modern literature at the University of Exeter. My research specialism lies at the intersection of early modern literary studies, medical humanities, and the history of emotion. I'm particularly interested in how bodies are imagined, documented, and observed in 16th and 17th century texts, and how their representation is shaped by, but also challenges and resists dominant political and cultural ideologies of the period. I'm particularly interested in how early modern bodies in crisis, whether that crisis is the crisis that Lucrece is experiencing in the aftermath of her rape by Tarquin, or the crisis of Adam and Eve after the fall, or wider, larger-scale crises such as the English public witnessing the execution of Charles I on the scaffold in 1649. So how those bodies in crisis are entangled with their environments, and also what this might tell us about precarious, vulnerable, and marginalized bodies in our own time. In terms of the MA, I contribute to the Global Voices Shakespeare and the Early Modern World module, where some weeks we ask how does the contact and the exchange between different cultures and populations, how is that mapped on the body, and the power dynamics in embodying difference and documenting difference. I also contribute to the Bodies Politic module, where, for instance, one week we examine Hamlet and the emotion of melancholy, and to what extent this is accessible to us in the context of sermons and scientific writing of the period on the topic. Finally, I contribute to MA dissertations, and I'll be very happy to discuss and supervise relevant MA dissertations. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicholas McDowell and I'm Professor of Early Modern Literature and Thought here at the University of Exeter. My research interests are particularly in the relationship between literature and different forms of context, religious, political, intellectual, in the period 1500 to 1750. A specific research interest has been the English Civil Wars and the impact of those political and religious conflicts on literature, and also on how literature participates in those conflicts. And that's a key theme of Bodies Politic, Cultural and Sexual Politics in England, one of the modules on the MA here. That module runs from the origins of the Civil War under the early Stuart state of Charles I into the Civil Wars themselves in the 1640s and a decade of Republican government in the 1650s, into the restoration of monarchy under Charles II in the 1660s and 1670s. And by literature, I think we mean here not only poetry, fiction, and drama, but also forms of non-fiction or prose, which flourished in this period. And a key figure in all of this is John Milton, on whom I've published extensively, who brings all of these interests together and is one of the greatest writers in prose as well as in poetry in his great epic Paradise Lost. And Milton is a key figure in what we study on Bodies Politic.
Hi, I'm Niall Alsop. I'm lecturer in English here at Exeter, My research interests are in literature of the English Civil Wars, and I'm particularly interested in relations between literature and political ideas. In recent years, that's meant ideas of power, ideas of the state and sovereignty, but I'm also starting to think of ideas of community and political participation, and that can mean looking beyond London and looking beyond the elite class for what we might call literary texts. But alongside that, I'm also interested in writers like John Milton, Andrew Marvell and Margaret Cavendish. In the MA programme here, I currently convene the Bodies Politic module where we look at literature and political ideas, including in Shakespeare and in Milton and the Civil Wars. We start with literary texts that you might be familiar with, and we move on to all sorts of other things that you might never have thought about before. And politic really is defined very broadly, as you can see from the module title. When we're talking about ideas of the body, we think about ideas of the state and violence, but also ideas of sexuality and gender, ideas of race and colonialism, ideas of labour and economy, and also new ways of looking at the body through science and medicine in the period. So all sorts of different ways of looking at politics and literature in this period.
My name is Pascal Abischer. I am Professor of Shakespeare and Early Modern Performance Studies, and I contribute to MA dissertation supervision and also to the MA module on environments of early modern drama. What I do for that module is contribute my expertise as a theatre historian and think about the environment of the early modern stage. So, for example, we will be thinking about Tamburlaine in relation to the architectural setup of the early modern Rose Playhouse, and we'll be playing around with ideas to do with how to move a chariot around the stage, and that will allow us to get to a different understanding, a more practical understanding of what early modern plays were like in performance as dramatic texts and not just as literary texts. I take that same sort of contextual understanding of the theatrical and industrial shaping of performance to the work that we will do on the module on film adaptations of plays by Shakespeare's contemporaries. And there, the industry context really shapes how we understand and how we get to access these plays in performance, shaped for present-day audiences.
Hi, I'm Felicity Henderson. I'm Senior Lecturer in Archives and Material Culture. And my work is broadly based around literature and science in the early modern period. So I work on a range of different kinds of texts, but what I'm really interested in finding out is how early modern scientists, and we use that term very broadly in this period when science was just beginning, how they choose to communicate their ideas to people who were not part of their group. Because there wasn't really a scientific narrative or a way of expressing scientific ideas that was clearly formulated at the time. And so they had to use literary techniques in order to communicate. And so I'm interested in how they did that, what kinds of forms they used, the kinds of metaphors that they're using. And also I'm interested in the way that more literary writers responded to scientific ideas. And how they challenged and interpreted what the scientists were doing. So in terms of my teaching on the MA, I contribute to teaching on Bodies Politic, where we do a week where we compare the writing of Margaret Cavendish, a very interesting and important writer in the period, with Robert Hooke, and she was responding to Hooke's ideas. I also contribute to dissertation supervision for the MA as well, and I'd be very keen to work with you on your dissertations if they fall into this broad area.
Hi, I'm Philip Schwitzer. I'm Professor of Renaissance Literature, and I'm the convener of the module Global Voices, Shakespeare in the Early Modern World. A lot of my research deals with national identity in the early modern period and the meanings of Englishness in the period, when it was very much up for grabs. I've looked in the past at Shakespeare's history plays as one mirror in which the English can discover themselves by looking at the English past. But it's not the only mirror available. I think Shakespeare and his contemporaries are perhaps even more interested in discovering mirrors beyond England, by which they can discover what it means to be English. And some of those mirrors involve radical and surprising acts of identification. To discover what it is to be English by looking at the life of a Jew in Renaissance Venice, or a queen of ancient Egypt, or a black man traveling the Mediterranean searching for a culture which he can call home. So that's what's taken me to Global Voices. My interest remains very much in the meanings of Englishness and what it meant to inhabit a nation in Shakespeare's England. But to look for that Englishness, we have to look well beyond the confines of the British Isles.
Hello, I'm Vicky Sperry. I am Senior Lecturer in Early Modern Literature here at the University of Exeter. My research specialises in medical history and ideas about the body and how we see in literary and dramatic representations ideas about age and gender being explored in interesting ways through a variety of texts and entertainments. My publications tend to highlight this in looking at reproductive theory and parental relationships, and more recently I've looked at ideas around puberty and adolescence in early modern culture, focusing in particular on Shakespeare's adolescence. My research informs my teaching on the MA pathway through the body politics module, where I look at ideas of the body as a spiritual, political and physical form, and particularly it informs the environments of early modern drama module, where I think about the body in early modern contexts, spaces and environments.
Hi, my name is Jo Ezra and I'm a lecturer in early modern literature and culture at the University of Exeter. My research specialism focuses on early modern voyaging and maritime literature and culture. So I look at pirates, I look at the sea as a space, I look at global literature, I look at travel literature of the period. My latest research, I'm looking at Shakespeare and maritime and voyaging language. So that is a research focus at the moment. My research speaks to the MA in many different ways, but I'm running sessions on the sea in literature for environments of early modern drama, and also my global perspective informs the pathway on Global Voices, Shakespeare in the early modern world.